Hey there, this is episode 91 of The First 10 Minutes. I'm Tony Parmetto.
I am Steve Halliwell.
And I'm Aaron Williams.
And this is a video games podcast where we play the first 10 minutes of a video game. Then we sit down here to discuss how well that game communicates itself to the player, both in terms of what the game is about and how to play the game. And in response to our latest listener poll, which you can find at The First 10 Minutes on Twitter, you, the listeners, voted for us to play Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. Steve, you played Hellblade. Take it away.
I did. All right, so it's a video game. It came out relatively recently. I played it on PC with a controller, and Wikipedia has the following to say. Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice is an action hack-and-slash video game developed and published by Ninja Theory for Microsoft Windows and PlayStation 4. It is described as an, air quotes, independent AAA game by the developer.
Okay.
Yeah. It was released on the 8th of August, 2017. The Steam description for Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. From the makers of Heavenly Sword, Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, and DMC, Devil May Cry, comes a warrior's brutal journey into myth and madness. Set in the Viking Age, a broken Celtic warrior embarks on a haunting vision quest into Viking Hell to fight for the soul of her dead lover.
Okay.
And if you're wondering what genre this is in, Steam Tags tells us it's the following genre.
Good.
Atmospheric, psychological, female protagonist, story-rich adventure, violent, third-person, single-player, action, dark mythology, dark fantasy, horror, indie, hack-and-slash, action-adventure, fantasy, walking simulator, realistic blood.
Not a great soundtrack.
Not a great soundtrack, apparently.
I would disagree.
Also, like the beginning of that was actually like almost a complete phrase.
A story-rich, atmospheric, psychological, horror, female protagonist, violent, third-person, single-player game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then what happened?
Okay, so I click start on my new game. Let's quickly run through some footage and then we'll get into some conversation. Feel free to jump in at any point if there are questions or things that you want to discuss.
And just Steve, just a quick reminder for the listeners that you can view the 10 minutes in question, which will be on our YouTube channel.
You totally can.
That will be linked in the show notes of this episode.
You will also notice that video is not 10 minutes long.
Yes.
That video, spoilers, much longer than 10 minutes. All right, so on our main menu, we have a start new game, we have an option, we have a Hellblade featurette, and equip. And what I have on this main menu is a young woman's face painted with blue across sort of like from her eyes upwards and some sort of headdress on, sort of looking up above where the camera is, so looking up and to the left. All right. So I get a loading screen. My loading screen fades out to what looks like a calm river. And I have some narration that I'm getting as a character is sort of rowing along this river slowly in a wooden canoe type thing. What it looks like right now. But it's actually just a log with a sort of a scoop cut out of it. And so the narration that I'm getting isn't our typical video game narration. It's not Senua finds herself on a journey to reclaim a lost... Like, we're not actually getting that dialogue. The dialogue we're getting here is... trying to think of how to not just say the thing the game says. So the game opens with... hey, we're going to talk about mental illness. In particular, we're going to talk about a couple of psychoses. And we're taking this seriously. The video game essentially opens with, hey, we're doing a thing, but we want you to know we want to be doing this right.
And it does that it does that in the form of who it credits first in the opening credits.
Yeah, so not only does it give you a sort of a warning, hey, we're going to talk about some mental illness, and if that's a thing that you weren't expecting, this maybe isn't for you, kind of warning. It also then, the first name that it credits, I believe, is the like mental health supervisor. To find the exact phrasing they use.
Yes, that's correct.
But so we're rowing down this river and we're getting narration that's talking, uncertain whether it's talking to me, the player, or presumably Senua, who is rowing.
Or someone else.
Or someone else entirely, yeah. But it is a detached third person talking at someone in sort of an accusatory fashion, dismissive and accusatory fashion. But it is also telling me some setup. It's telling me this is a journey into the deep darkness. There will be no stories after this one. And so I'm not in control of what's happening on screen. This is an animation playing out. I get some minor camera control. I can sort of influence the camera a little bit, maybe like 10 degrees in any direction, to sort of look around my surroundings. And there are credits in world, so there are big names with their roles in white text, sort of in world as we move through this environment. And I'm not up on my Viking mythology, so I'm going to use the mythology I am better acquainted with. It seems like Senua is rowing up the river Styx. Like there are crashed what look like Viking longboats. As she progresses further along this calm river, there are what look like giant sharpened spears with dead bodies hanging from them. At this point,
in various states of decay as well.
And some look like they've been burnt. Some of them look like they've been there for ages. Some look like they've just been put there. And we get other voices chiming in and commenting on what's happening here as well. So we get other female voices with different tones, with different personalities or different attitudes, commenting on what's happening here. With our narrator still telling us what's happening. We get a call out for an FX lead, and as we sort of get through what has been a very thick mist, we can now see that we're going into a narrow, sort of like a tributary with cliffs on either side, and more bodies. And again, my character is still rowing on their own. I get more credits, a cinematics lead. I'm entering into a forest, still on this river, slowly paddling. So my character seems Senua seems either this is the end of a very long journey, or she is hesitant about what she's doing. She doesn't seem like she's in a rush. She seems determined, but tired. Another thing that I sort of get told earlier on, but only because I read the Steam page, is there's something on the back of Senua's belt. We're seeing most of this from behind Senua.
Right.
Also, she has amazing dreadlocks. It's worth pointing out.
Yes.
She has what appears to be a skull-shaped thing wrapped up in material hooked to her belt. It doesn't seem to serve any purpose, and it only really draws my attention to it in one of the earlier shots, so it sort of pans up it. And because other media about the game has told me that she's trying to reclaim her lost love, it makes me wonder if this is the skull of that love or what. It looks like there are pits in this otherwise orb-shaped thing where eyes would be and where a nose would be. It looks like they're trying to make it look like a skull, even if it isn't. So it looks like this could be Viking times. She's wearing a fur around her neck, and she looks like she's probably wearing like leather or canvas style material.
So can I just jump in briefly for a moment here, Steve?
Go for it.
So I just want to point out that even though Steve played this game, Steve, you made a specific request for Aaron and I to have a look at your 10 minutes of footage beforehand. So
yes, we do some pre-prep.
Yes. So in this particular case, if it sounds like I'm sort of being prescient and jumping straight in and mentioning things that Steve did, it's because I've seen the video. I just want to point out that the credits that Steve is referring to are actual text that is embedded in the world. And I do want to call particular attention to this and why I think the use of them is quite clever. It reminded me of, say, something similar to the opening credits of Grand Theft Auto 4, where you have a montage of the city with the text of people who worked on it embedded in the city. What I found was different in this case, and what made it so distinctive, was that very slight amount of camera control that you had, Steve. These pieces of text were positioned such that it was encouraging you to look around.
Yes.
And then
so they're often flanking me.
And through the act of glancing to the left or to the right, certainly in me watching your footage back, it was forcing me or drawing my eye towards a number of different things that were in the world, and perhaps encouraging me to pay attention to details that I might miss if I were tuned out because I don't have camera control.
Yeah.
And also just highlighting drawing attention to the fact that there was a mental health consultant on the project, and also a historical consultant.
Yes.
Yeah.
The two first credits that you see. So really sort of covering that base that, responsibility has been taken with this project.
Yeah. So yes, a mental health advisor and a historical advisor.
Yeah. And it's not until much further down this river that I get the credits for the writer and director.
Yes. Yes.
Piece. And before that, I get a bunch of. I don't mean this to sound as dismissive as it does, but a bunch of technical fields, like lead visual effects artist, lead engine artist, lead scripting, etc.
Yep.
So go ahead.
No, you go on. There's a couple of points that I do want to bring up, but it can wait until we've finished sort of the recap.
Yep. So I'm continuing down this river, and it's at this point that we haven't really mentioned yet that I would stick a flag in this game as the most visually and technically impressive game I think I've ever seen. This game is staggeringly accomplished in terms of production quality. It's like whether you appreciate the art style or not, the fact that this game is running as well as it is on my PC and looking as visually rich as it does is amazing. This is probably the best use of Unreal Engine 4 that I've seen to date. This is Unreal Engine 4 game, if we didn't mention that earlier. The use of fog in particular, the volumetric fog, and the sun shafts or the crepuscular rays, and atmospheric scattering is all being used very, very well here.
And the opening the game with the main character paddling softly and gently through water with all of the ripples and reflections that generates is very accomplished.
Yeah. The water is responding, and it has what appear to be very accurate screen space ray trace reflections on it, even to the point of when you're moving the camera around, it's reflecting the credits that are nestled in the world accurately against the water below them.
And I guess seeing as we're highlighting how accomplished the visuals are, I think we should probably also mention the audio.
Yes.
While we're at it.
Yeah.
So the game makes a point of saying this game is best experienced with headphones. So it's using, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. This is one of those words I never feel like I'm saying correctly. It's doing binaural audio.
Yeah. That's I'd say binaural.
And essentially I am by no means an audio expert, but my understanding is this is recording for stereo playback, but simulating the phase shift and obscurance and sort of reflections that your own head and ears have.
Yeah.
So even though you're only hearing it through stereo speakers, through headphones, that's mirroring the way the audio was recorded. So it's actually recorded with like a fake head to get that stereo imagery. So things that are behind you have the appropriate frequencies dulled from them. And so it does that recording method and that sort of playback method is very good at capturing a 3D space in a way that stereo or 5.1 can't do.
And that's particularly pertinent given the fact that you hear so many voices speaking to you or around you.
Yes. So they're using that. They use that throughout the play session, and if you're listening to it on YouTube, you will probably get almost the full effect because it is just stereo audio if you listen to headphones.
Yeah, so going back and reviewing the footage before recording this episode, I was actually quite shaken when I started the video. I didn't know what to expect, and yeah, it works. It works a treat.
Yeah. So that they're using that effect to position these multiple narrators or voices talking to or about Senua around you in the space.
Yeah.
So they feel like they're close and whispering to you. They feel like they're far away and laughing at you. Yeah, it's very good.
I think the other thing that works really well as far as the audio goes is the ambient sort of mood music that's accompanying a lot of this, which is it's sort of like it's one of those things. It's so non-musical it can almost be ignored, but without it, you would notice it. It integrates very well with the voices to just add to this overall sense of uncertain unease. Yeah.
So I'll read out some of the lines from the dialogue that we're getting. This is, I think, about halfway through my rowing trip. We get you might think she's brave to go on this journey on her own, but it isn't bravery that drives her. Bravery only means something to those afraid of death. Senua's fear runs far, far deeper. So there's a lavishness to some of the dialogue. So giving this tale grandeur that otherwise it might not have. And at about 7 minutes into my play session, this very long intro cutscene ends. The rowboat reaches the end of this little river. Senua gets out of the boat in sort of a little grassy area with the sun coming directly into her face. And we hear these other voices commenting on what she's doing and saying. We have multiple at the same time speaking over each other. I actually have the subtitles on, and you can see that put subtitles in different places when there are multiple voices talking over each other. So we have one voice saying, "What's she looking at? What is she leaving behind? I know what she's thinking. I can hear her thoughts." And another voice saying, "She wants to go back. She's scared. Go back."
I also noticed a few instances where the subtitles at the top of the screen, which seemed to be the place that the less authoritative and more scattered voices went, would have in the same line of subtitle text a number of phrases that were in a different order to the order you hear them in, and were also from multiple speakers, even though they were all put on the same line of subtitle. And that to me felt very intentional, because sometimes you will have subtitles, if you have them switched on, at the top of screen and the bottom of screen, with voices speaking not over the top of each other, but around each other and in reference to each other, and they're out of sequence in the way that they're put on screen.
Yes.
And the way that adds to the sense of confusion and kind of a mental cloudiness almost. And
sort of as well, I found the overwhelmingness of trying to read two lines of subtitles at opposite ends of the screen.
Yes. And it made the general expression that I tended to see on Senua's face when I could see her face make a lot more sense to me, because she looks like she's a little bit muddled and or a little bit afraid, and possibly has consumed something that is affecting her mental capacities.
Sure.
I can't recall if you, somewhere in one of your descriptors, Steve, was the phrase Vision Quest used?
Yes.
Somewhere in there?
Yeah, one of the marketing spiels had Vision Quest.
Yep. And I mean, to me, I'm not super knowledgeable about the particulars of the culture being represented here, but when somebody says to me Vision Quest, I imagine that it involves or could involve the consumption of potentially hallucinogens, or what have you,
or like starvation or sleep deprivation or something,
or a combination of all of the above.
Anything that can induce hallucinatory effects.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's one moment here I want to call out before we press on to me moving around the environment.
Yeah.
That's still this cutscene that happens as I get out of this boat. So Senua turns, so the camera is panning around and Senua is counter-turning to face towards where camera will be. as these voices are saying she wants to go back, she needs to go back, it's not too late to go back. And one of the voices then says, oh, she heard us. And at the exact same instant, Senua looks straight down camera.
Yep.
And this moment was so affecting to me because, like, not only like you don't do this very often in movies, but in games, very rarely we look at the camera at all. Like, I can think of examples in film and TV where you look at the camera for either dramatic effect or asides, or most often I think for comedy we see it. But here, it pulls me out of passive observer into I'm in this space.
And that kind of recontextualizes where the camera, air quotes, camera, was positioned during the entirety of the boat ride.
Yes.
Because looking at it, imagining that it's a physical body in that space, you could very well be sitting directly behind her as a passenger on the boat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the way that the camera moves for at least during each cutscene is very much, I am crawling behind you, or I am lumbering this piece of equipment around behind you.
Yes, it looks like. Okay, so we know they did a lot of really good performance capture work for this game. They've talked about that in their marketing sort of pushes leading up, and I believe the Hellblade featurette that comes with the game is going to talk about that as well.
The specific call out in the credits, as I recall, is Senua performed by.
Yes.
Rather than voiced by. Yep.
And it looks as though the camera is also part of that motion capture.
Yeah.
So it feels so connected that it feels like there is a human who is watching Senua, which is where the camera is then placed. And that's reinforced again later on, but I believe that's outside of my 10 minutes. Where that feeling hits me again, where I don't feel like I am in a video game watching a character.
Yep.
I feel like I am a camera in a space looking at a scene play out.
Okay. Steve, would you mind if I showed my hand here?
Go for it.
I'm gonna name drop another game.
What?
Alan Wake.
Alan Wake's a wonderful video game.
So there were two distinct moments of your 10 minutes that invoked what I recall from Alan Wake so strongly to me.
Yes.
And they both happen kind of from the point where you just start getting control of the camera, and then some of the things that follow on from that in terms of what happens to the environment around you.
Yes.
So I think the camera part of it maybe is the part to talk about first. My understanding, if I recall correctly, is that Alan Wake had a virtual cameraman, air quotes.
Yes, their camera, as I recall, they talked about it in some of their developer interviews, has AI routines that navigate around the environment, trying to properly frame Alan and where he is looking.
Yep. So,
which means that you can get away from the cameraman and they have to catch up, and they lag behind in all sorts of interesting. So
the reason that I was so struck by this was that it reminded me of that, except I don't feel like a camera person here. I feel like a character in the world who is observing or on this journey with Senua.
Yes.
And yet, immediately after that, you get to start controlling Senua, and that...
Yeah.
I haven't played this myself, but trying to wrap my head around what that would have done to my sense of who I am in this game world seems, and I mean this in a good way, odd.
Yes.
So having walked the walk, Steve, seeing as we're at that part of your 10 minutes.
Yep. So just after Senua looks at camera and she pushes the raft away from the water.
Yep.
In the cutscene,
a very light log by the looks of how quickly it moves too.
A very light log, but also her silent response is the way I took it to these voices saying it's not too late, we can get out of here. Yeah. Her going, no, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
Not you.
Yep.
I don't need this thing.
Yep.
And she does that through actions, not through speech.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, having this cut from the character going, I see you there, when she looks down the lens, and disregarding the voices puts me in the mindset of, I don't think I'm Senua, which is probably a thing we're going to talk about at the end.
Yeah.
To sort of spoilers. But then being given control of Senua, it's a little jarring, but it does sort of immediately go, all right, time to video game. I want you to focus on this thing to get story. So in the moment, other than the jar for me came when she looked down the lens. When it then went to, and now it's a video game, that didn't unsettle me. Because it's what I was expecting, right? What I was expecting was a third-person action game. And when it comes that, I sort of let all of it fall away, and I kind of forget that it's there. It's like, oh, and now I play a video game. So it doesn't really tell me any controls at all. It tells me to focus on a symbol that's in front of me on what looks like a headstone. And when I do, I figure out what that button is. I don't even remember what it was now. I couldn't tell you. It might have been clicking a stick. It might have been a trigger. But it's a zoom, like a lean forward in a PT.
Hey, now you talk my language.
And when I focus in on it, a symbol changes color, which is like a in-world UI element kind of thing with glyphs on it.
Yep.
I'm saying glyphs. I don't know if that's the correct term.
Glyphs or runes or, I'm not sure.
Letters that look like they're Latin, but not the way I'm used to seeing them. And I get I think this is the point where I first get a male voice telling me what's been going on.
I think there are a couple of whispering voices that are male as well. Just a couple of phrases. Yeah,
I'd have to rewatch it to be sure. But this is the first time that struck me of, all the voices have not been obviously male to me at this point, kind of thing. Like it was clearly a different kind of voice talking to me. And the way that it speaks sounds more like it's remembered voice or it's voice from the past rather than necessarily something in the moment talking to me, which many of the other voices are. They're commenting on what Senua is doing at that second. So I get a little bit of that, and now I'm getting my sort of basic navigation around the world section. It asks me to essentially walk through this winding path. It's a third-person camera. So like many of their other products, it's that kind of camera setup. Again, it still looks wonderful. And I approach a flooded area that I have to walk through. That Senua ends up like waist deep in this water that she's trudging through. And this is the next bit, I'm assuming, that reminded you of Alan Wake.
Coming up on it,
Yeah. So just after I get out of that watery area, I get
and my goodness, that water wading looked impressive.
It did. The water responding to Senua's motions looks wonderful.
Yes.
So I get a very Alan Wake. The darkness is coming. It yearns for life, hungers for it, like a pack of wolves on the hunt. But she is not stopping, is the line that I have here.
Yeah.
And so basically all the light gets sucked out of the world. Everything gets tinted blue instead of the greyish yellow that it was before. The wind picks up, so all of the trees in the area that I'm in start rustling and there's more particle effects. And we get, for lack of a better term, an Alan Wake style like haze effect happening at different layers in the environment.
Yeah, it also...
So further away some...
Yeah, it also reminded me of the sort of the Christopher Nolan-esque every one-sheet poster for this film is filled with ash effect.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Or even, speaking of Christopher Nolan, even the way he shoots the scarecrow effect in whichever Batman movie that is.
It's Batman Begins.
The first one.
Yeah.
Batman Begins, yeah.
The first one. That is the most trollish Batman comment in the history of ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original.
Yep.
Nice.
It's also like Dark Smoke in Twin Peaks. If you tuned in this week.
Nope.
I'm not up to date. Sorry.
Well, listeners.
So the last thing of Twin Peaks I wrote, there was like a small dancing person and some backwards speaking, and I got confused and I stopped watching it.
Yeah,
and
I didn't get it.
And that was 25 years ago. No, I'm
well.
Yeah, there's been some development since then.
You'll be pleased to know, Tony. It's all happening again.
okay. I'm kidding.
It is.
I'm watching the new show. I'm just a few weeks behind. Anyway, Steve, I just wanted to point out there was an excellent plug for your Let's Play Batman Arkham Asylum that's on YouTube at the moment.
Yeah.
Go to a YouTube channel and check it out. Go to YouTube.
Go watch the first one.
Anyway. So Alan Wake, you were saying about Hellblade.
Yes, it has the same effect that the darkness in Alan Wake has, but much higher fidelity because the engine is much newer.
Yes.
So it feels like the environment is being ripped and distorted around me, that it's shaking, that it's angry. I don't know if I had stood still if something bad would have happened, but it's oppressive. It's not an environment that wants me in it. And I get told that this is the darkness and that it is coming for me.
Yeah.
So I'm pressed to move forward, and I do. I crest sort of over a small hill, and the lighting changes back to the yellow sort of sunrise color palette instead of the night palette that it had had before. And it's like the darkness has faded.
Yep.
And just around my 10 minutes here, I get a line that says, "The land of mist and fog, the old fool was right." What was it he said? "The river of knives across which lies the halls of hell, a place they call Helheim." And so the other voices are coming in and saying, "Can you see it? It's here. I can feel him." And I have what looks like either like a dragon or like a horse's head. Looks like it's made out of a destroyed or a wrecked ship on top of a mountain with the sun behind it, and they've got the rays coming through it. And there's a very decrepit-looking bridge leading from a mountain behind me to this island, and I'm on a beach with many, many, many stakes in the river with dead bodies in them, and that is about my 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think we have probably covered most of my major talking points that I had, other than one.
Yeah.
So we've talked about looking down the camera and how I thought that was great and what the implications of that are a little bit.
Yep.
We've talked about how amazing or how well used that the binaural audio is. Another thing that I kind of wanted to mention there, not to detract from it because it's not fair, but this game does feel like it has that weird horror movie thing happening, where if you turn the sound off, it doesn't make any sense anymore. It's not a pro or a con or anything. Just in the moment, it struck me that, wow, this feels the way it does entirely because of this soundscape.
Yep.
And without it, this wouldn't be hitting me at all.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just a pleasant row down a river.
It's a very well rendered, slightly ominous river.
Yeah. At a certain point, like the dead bodies do kind of put you off your Sunday afternoon a little bit.
But at some point, you're like, I've seen a lot of these already.
You're like, I'm desensitized at this point. It's just part of the landscape to me.
The relentless but very soft and in isolation quite relaxing sound of her paddling through the water over and over and over for 7 minutes got to the point where it started to feel like something oppressive.
Much Sisyphus.
Yeah. And certainly
except it's a real easy task to do. It's just like you just need to do a row forever.
And early on in the piece, I was trying to figure out, because it felt to me like she was trying to sneak in somewhere. She's trying to approach cautiously and not be seen and not be heard. And given the amount of fog and the amount of kind of oppressive vibe that was coming through, I don't know. It in terms of ratcheting up the tension and making it feel not so much like something was all right. So I'm watching. I was watching this here at home with my headphones on, and the entire time that I was watching it, I was going, "This is putting me on edge." I don't feel like something's about to jump out at me in the game, but if my kid walks up behind me right now and taps me on the shoulder, I'm going to lose my shit. Was kind of the thought that was running through my head.
Yes.
So in terms of generating and sustaining that tension without exhausting me or without it feeling like it was starting to lose its effect, I think is a great testament to how well paced it is.
And I think one of the things you've said there that's really worth pointing at, and it is really unique for this game, I think, is that you didn't feel like something was going to jump out and scare you.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't preparing you for you're in imminent danger, but you don't know when it's going to strike.
I feel like I'm in mortal peril, but I don't feel like I'm in imminent danger. Yep.
Yes, but you're not.
Yes, this isn't about fright. This is about dread.
Yep.
Yes. I'm not concerned that a zombie is going to jump out of the water and grab me. I'm concerned that Senua really shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, what I'd like us to do is to go on a mind journey.
Oh.
I know. So, I played 10 minutes of this game, and I'm going to be very reductive. I'm going to say that I played for about 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so our temptation here, or our challenge in front of us is, how can we make more of this game interactive?
You row the boat.
You row the boat. All right, give me full boat control. I can row.
Allow me to.
Yeah, I can row straight into that.
Allow me to hypothesize what would have happened in that case, Steve.
Yes,
you would have gone, I wonder where I can go here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would have gone, wait, am I supposed to be listening to all of this? Then you would have gone either, wow, they've gone quiet for an awfully long time, or what these people are saying doesn't make any sense to me because I'm all the way over here trying to see if I can fall off the edge of the world.
Yes.
Because I'm doing donuts.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yes, biting criticism of my playstyle aside, I would have tried to find the limits of what they had put me in front of.
Yes.
If they had given me boat control.
Yes. That's what I was implying.
Yes. That's what I would have done. I would have gone, it's interactive, and I would have been focusing on my interaction rather than the delivery, the audio.
Yeah, and then what's happening is you're not hitting... Let's get even more reductive. You're not hitting your trigger volumes in time for the pacing of the vocal delivery to sustain and build drama.
Which means they would either have to write filler lines so that they don't stop talking, but the context drops. Yeah. Which, as good as Telltale has gotten at that, I don't think you can string that out forever. Or they would be talking out of context.
Yes.
And then eventually they would be like, well, we're done. We've done our 7-minute speech, but you've just been doing doughies.
Yep. So
you can just row down this river for a bit.
Allow me to plant another flag. We're planting so many flags here on this episode. I'm going to plant another flag. I'm going to say that giving you control over rowing this boat makes as much sense as giving you control over the start of Half-Life 2 so that you can drive the rail car wherever you want to.
Oh, what a great idea. That would improve that so much.
No.
So G-Man rocks up as like, we're really low on rail drivers, Freeman. Your time has come. You could just... we need you to hold this throttle just all the way full. The computer does the rest. But we do need you here.
The rail man in the rail place can do this job efficiently and to code.
Yep.
This is about pace.
I would play the shit out of that game.
This is about pace and timing. And this is about building and sustaining the right tone.
Yes.
Yep.
And I think that someone somewhere can make an argument that you could build and craft that while it being interactive some way, somehow.
Yeah.
But this does its job very well.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we could potentially say to air quotes, sorry, sarcasm quotes, improve this video game would be, well, let's make that intro cutscene shorter so you can get to the point where you walk around faster, because at least then you're walking around.
Oh, no.
Other than the fact that they have a lot of people they want to make sure get their dues.
Yeah.
And if the number of names had to be compressed into a smaller amount of space, that would then feel like the sections of my most recent Batman Let's Play, where I've had to speed up cutscenes because they take too goddamn long. Comical is what they end up being, I think you'll find.
But okay, so let's dive into the timing here. You were watching an air quotes cutscene for 7 minutes. It was a very brisk 7 minutes.
That 7 minutes flies by.
Which I find particularly impressive, considering that you are gently and quietly paddling a boat down a stream.
Yes.
But there's it's that extra ingredient, which is that slow build of tension and the escalation of dread as well, which is what makes the time fly by so quickly. And it's for that reason that I think that this 7 minutes has to be the length of a scene like this, because that is a generous amount of time to really ramp up that degree of uncomfortableness.
Yep.
It has to be.
Yep. So the other
We're doing so bad at improving this video game.
I know. And the other thing that we touched on earlier, and I said we would come back to it, and now we have.
Yep.
The way that we read, the way we interpret, sorry, I'll be more literal. The way that we interpret when Senua looks at camera and a voice says, oh no, she sees us, or she hears us. I forget which one it is. If I was in control of Senua for the entirety of that 7 minutes while I was rowing my boat and not just able to observe what Senua is observing, it undercuts the interpretation that I think I like the most, which is I am not Senua.
Yep.
I am one of the voices in her head. I am one of the chorus that is trying to get Senua to do or feel or think.
I'm not even
I
sure
do.
you're that, Steve. I think you're something different.
Okay.
I don't think you're one of these voices. I think you're something other than that, because these voices are talking about Senua in the present tense and in the third person. Sometimes it feels like they're speaking for your benefit, but sometimes it feels like they're conversing amongst themselves and you do not feel like part of that conversation.
That's true.
So my takeaway from, and I've only watched your first 10 minutes of this game, is that you are some other party or force in this, and I don't know what that is, but I do just want to point out a couple of things. Your limited amount of camera control while you're sitting on this log behind Senua, you are panning the camera around your point of view. You are not orbiting it around Senua.
Yes.
Which further enforces that you have a physical presence in the world.
Yep.
And all of these sort of jumble of different things that we've been talking about, whether it's virtual camera person or point of view or looking down the lens or these voices conversing to you or around you. And I'm going to bring it back to Alan Wake again. This made me think about, who is the author of this story? Is it me? Is it Senua? Is it something else? And at this point, I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's probably integral to what is happening in this game.
Yes.
And I guess as another way of kind of trying to encompass a whole bunch of different things that we've mentioned. We've called out a number of genuinely accomplished technical aspects of this game, be they visual or audio, but I'm not quite sure that we've drawn the line enough between the fact that they're really well executed and the fact that they're being used for a very specific purpose. Yep. So with regards to the audio and the binaural, now we've perhaps all mispronunciated it.
Yeah. Sorry, audio people.
In regards to that, like that as a thing that you could have in an options list as a tick box for you to turn on and off is something that you could conceive being in a game just because it's something that is possible to do. This feels like a very intentional choice and backed up by the fact that it says, wear headphones, damn it.
Yeah.
Because if I had been listening to the footage of your playthrough on my crappy laptop speakers, I would have lost 95% of the impact of going, not only am I hearing all these voices, but they're coming from different places. It feels like they're whispering around me.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're whispering. Feels like they don't want to be overheard.
Yes.
And that as an additional way of building that tension and building that fact that we're not supposed to be here. She's not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. None of us are supposed to be here. Was very powerful. When it comes to the visual aspects, what I think is particularly notable, and I can't remember the technical terms that you use, Steve, but there is a conjunction of worldliness and otherworldliness that's happening here that isn't just at play when the darkness shows up and the lighting changes, but there is I got a very genuine sense here of this is a real place, but it's not our place.
Yes.
Yep.
So I think some of that is the architecture feels false.
Yep. Even though it's it's a natural environment. Yes.
Yes, it's a natural landscape, but this feels like an entirely artificial river.
It feels like it's been crafted.
Yeah.
It's a tributary of the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It feels like this place in this world exists for this purpose, not that it's a naturally occurring environment.
Yeah.
There's also the formations on the rock faces don't feel normal. I think in rewatching some of my footage, some of them actually appear to have glyphs or runes carved in them as well. The in terms of like art direction, these large wooden spikes that stick up out of the ground almost look like a flooded forest or a burnt forest.
Yep.
But they're clearly air quotes man-made.
They're placed.
Like
they feel like
sharpened.
they feel like something has put them there.
They kind of remind me of like a World War II film, right? Like the beaches of Normandy covered in tank traps. Is what this feels like, and to sort of or Viking longboat traps, if you will, to keep people out and ward people off. It sort of has that otherworldly nature that you'd expect from a black and white monster movie set in the Amazon or the Congo or something.
Yep.
The things that appear natural but not the way they should be.
So I've got a couple of questions for you, Steve.
Yeah.
When do you think this game is set?
I mean, I believe it tips its hand that it's meant to be Viking times, air quotes, whatever that means.
Yep.
I'm not a history buff as much as perhaps I should be, or that people might think.
Right.
So I don't know when that is. Is that like 400 AD? I don't know. That sounds like a good year for there to be Vikings. It's in a time where all you had was leather made out of hides, and seemingly a log with a scoop cut out of it was a pretty good boat.
So I guess it was kind of a trick question, Steve, but I think the I think the interesting aspect here is that the game doesn't start with a title card that tells you when it is and where it is, and it also doesn't have a quote from Alice in Wonderland.
That's a good move.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always a good move.
It seems to just be approaching this on its own terms and just diving straight into here we are.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening.
It definitely is. We are here, and you're going to figure out what our lore is as we move through.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if it's inside or outside of the 10 minutes where it starts. It says Helheim in about the 10 minutes.
Yes.
I don't remember if that is before or after it's talking about the realms of the Viking lore and the rulers of them and who they are. I think that's outside of the 10 minutes. But it does start revealing, no, we are definitely steeped in and set within what I understand to be real Earth lore.
Yeah.
To reuse our term.
Yep.
But it doesn't feel like it needs to say, 423 AD,
yes.
Scandinavia.
Yes.
Yeah. 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, with the 24 style.
Yep.
Yeah.
And every moment of this 10 minutes is presented from a conceivable camera perspective of a person in this environment.
Yes.
Yep.
The camera work outside of the 10 minutes has another one of those amazing moments where it feels like the camera feels like it's being operated by me, the player, the observer of whatever Senua is doing, and the camera moves in to check if Senua is okay. She's fallen down or lost a fight. I can't remember.
Right.
I think it's in the footage. But the camera moves down to check if she's okay, like you would move down to check if someone's okay if they've fallen over or something like that.
And if I recall correctly, all of this is continuous and there's no interruptions, there's no camera cuts, there's no angle changes. It all just flows.
I think I fell off a log at one point and died. But otherwise, yes, it's continuous.
One can forgive death being an interruption, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're permitted a couple of stumbles off logs.
Bouncing all of my thoughts on this around in my head, I only have one other general topic, but it's completely different from anything we've talked about before. So I might save that for a bit later.
That's okay, because I really just wanted to wrap up our point about improving this air quotes video game with our sneer quotes. Is that none of them make it better?
No, they all make it worse.
They all make this game worse.
We didn't suggest turning it into a rhythm game, though.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll leave that on the table.
Yeah. Listeners, write in. Let us know. How would this function as a rhythm game?
But yeah, this isn't I'm going to speak for myself. You're welcome to not agree with my terms. This isn't a video game-ass video game.
Right.
It is what it needs to be, and all the things that I can read out of the experience and that I can get out of the experience that I'm having would be diminished if it was more of a video game-ass video game.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't want
cinematic form.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
I was just saying, and I don't want that. I want to be able to have the experience and the interpretations that I can have from this the way it is right now.
Authorship.
Yes.
There's that authorship thing again.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think things like heavy use of cinematic form and function are fine if it's right for the project, right? And if it's implemented and utilized in a way that is actually meaningful and isn't arbitrary.
Yep.
Which is what we've just spent the last hour talking about.
Excellent. So now, Tony, you can segue wherever you like because I've put a little bow on that.
Okay. I could completely change to a different thing, but I just thought of something else that's kind of in the ballpark of where we're at now.
Go ahead.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
What's up with Senua? And I'm not asking for you to give a factual answer. I'm asking based on what we have just observed in 10 minutes and all the things we've seen and heard. Okay. What is up with Senua? What do you understand is happening here?
If I just look at what I understood about Senua in the 10, not what I get beyond it, which gives me some more lore and backstory, is Senua is on a mission.
Yep.
And Senua is struggling with some shit. Mm-hmm. But she is dealing. She is determined. She knows that this is probably not going to work out great, but god damn it, she's got to try.
Yep.
She's going to push through despite what is happening and trying to be...
Cool.
Not even the devil on her shoulder, the things that are actively trying to tear her down.
All right, so to dig a little deeper, Steve, how do you know any of these things? Because she hasn't said a single word.
Yes. The facial capture is very, very technically accomplished and is allowing me to see expressions that normally I wouldn't expect to be able to see on a video game character.
But you also spend the majority of the time not seeing her face. You see the back of her head because it's a third-person game. So these brief moments, what is actually happening in those brief moments where you do see her face?
Grizzled is the wrong word. She seems determined and driven. Mm-hmm. And the look that we get to camera says, I know what you're doing and you're not going to stop me.
Right.
And I think the important thing to note is that there is still that air of uncertainty on her face as well.
She looks afraid.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
She doesn't look like she's unafraid.
Yep.
No.
Yes.
But, as the old saying goes, you can't be brave unless you're afraid.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I'm sure I mangled that one badly.
We know what you're
Being
after.
brave doesn't mean you go looking for trouble.
All right. Are you ready for a derailment? Or is this...
Yeah.
All right. Now, I will confess, Steve, that this has almost entirely happened because of a conversation you and I had earlier today in an unrelated setting.
Okay.
But I just checked on Steam, and this game's price tag is only $30, and that seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
As in, this game is way more than a $30 game.
I would agree. For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, that's fine, because we talked about an article that Sergey, the Steam Spy guy, posted earlier this week.
I didn't say it because I couldn't remember his name, so I'm glad
I believe it's Sergey.
Yep.
About the price of indie video games and market volume and things like that. This game looks so... Like, if we even put aside all the amazing things we've talked about that I get to do or experience, the way this game looks would be enough for you to put a $60 price tag on it on Steam and no one would bat an eye.
But I mean, even that's reductive, right? Saying that it has to look X for it to be worthwhile.
I totally agree.
Yeah, yes.
And that's not what I was meaning to say about it.
Yep.
So it's not a great example, but I was meaning this game doesn't feel like it needs to say, I'm only worth $30.
Yeah.
Nothing about this game feels like it's less than the biggest budget game that you would buy on Steam. Like the quote from the Wikipedia page is, it is described as an independent AAA game by the developer. So our understanding is Ninja Theory are using some of their resources to make this, while the rest of the team is doing something bigger. I used air quotes for bigger. Because this does not feel like a game that needed minimal or less, or that corners had to be cut, or that there's any sign that this isn't blood, sweat, and tears of a lot of people caring an awful lot about something.
In every aspect of what's happening. Yep.
As I understand it, it's not especially long, but not everyone sees that as a bad thing. The only thing I can think that perhaps is the reason why maybe they wanted this to be a lower price title is maybe they don't think that it's long enough to want to ask for a higher price. I don't agree with that.
But I don't pay more.
That's an existing Oh, sorry, Tony.
I don't pay more for a movie ticket to watch the extended cut of The Lord of the Rings than I do to watch Rambo, which I believe is 70-something minutes long.
But
and that's the problem, right? Is that we still inside of this young industry, there's still a sense that the length of a thing denotes the worth.
That quantity is what you're paying for.
Look, if the argument is that that price should equate to the amount of time you play, then jump in a time machine and go back to the arcades and start putting those 20-cent coins into the machine. But as of 2017,
exactly.
As of 2017, I think it's nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, and it's there are still arcade machines today. There's a midnight club machine that if you want to get the best of the best, you'll wind up spending upwards of like $300.
Yeah. Anyway, what I'm saying, Ninja Theory, if you're listening, is I would pay you a lot more for this game.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought twice about paying a full price. AAA console price for this title.
Yeah.
If only the market saw it the same way.
Well, there's a task for you, Aaron, and our readers to find that article.
Yes,
that's it.
So it was a blog. It was a blog post written on SteamSpy.com.
He will have linked it on his Twitter profile. I believe he posted it on Medium. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If you check the Steam Spy Twitter profile, it'll be there. It'll be relatively recent.
Yes.
We may add it to we can add it to the show notes.
We can.
How about that?
We can do that. Indeed, we can.
How are we feeling? Any more things we want to chat about, or should we wrap this up?
Look, I just wanted to jump in with a personal perspective. This is what Tony reckons corner.
Welcome to Tony's time.
So we, for every episode that we do, we put out a Twitter poll where we give our listeners 3 different options of things to vote on. And I will confess, Steve, that until you nominated this game for this week's poll, I had never even heard of this game. So to go from that to then, I guess this is what we're talking about this episode, to reviewing your 10 minutes of footage a couple of hours before we recorded this. I am very smitten with this game, and I'm very much looking forward to having a crack at it myself. And I can't recall off the top of my head a more potent example of being kind of blindsided by something. And I mean, our tagline for this podcast is not a review, but I think it's just worth pointing out that that in terms of capturing my attention and my interest, this has done an excellent job of doing so.
Yes.
Yep.
Definitely. And a wonderful branch here to our wrap-up of what is the game, to tell me how to play, to tell me what it's about. Yep. From our discussions, I think that you can surmise that this game gives you a pretty good indication of what this game is about. In terms of the actual mechanics of how to play it, we could argue whether this is a pro or a con, but the game never tells me anything. The most it tells me is focus. I believe the word was focus. Focus on the thing.
Yep.
Doesn't tell me what button that does, but I pressed enough buttons until something zoomed in, and I assumed that was focus, so I did it. It didn't tell me how to move. It didn't tell me how to run. It didn't tell me how to jump or swing a sword or anything else. It just assumed that I would press the buttons and they would do the things that I needed them to do.
Yep.
I appreciate that because I'm happy to press the buttons and see what they do. I know that this is a problem, though, for people who aren't used to using a controller.
Yeah.
Because that mental mapping of, well, these things should do these things, and even the mapping of, I think I pressed this button and this happened, and now I have made that connection.
Yep.
Can take more time. But I know what the game's about. I figured out how to play it on my own. It didn't need to badger me with it. And I think for the kind of experience this is crafting, I really appreciated that it didn't say, press left trigger.
Yes.
Like, I appreciated that it was enough of a tip of the hat to be like, you should focus on this thing.
Yeah.
And that you should progress down towards your goal. Like, I should walk now. I appreciated that, and it didn't have to start speaking about button mappings to me. So I think it did very well. Let's go to the plugs. Thanks, Steve. It's plug time. If you have enjoyed our discussion of Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and you would like to let us... Good. What I'd like you to do, Tony, is I'd like you to... You have two options. A fork in the road approaches. You can email us at contact@thefirst10minutes.com.
Yep.
Or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Patreon, Libsyn, and until the 23rd of August, SoundCloud.
Whoa, that's very specific, Steve. It's
Very
like
specific.
you have so many details in your head of what's going on. You're definitely in charge. You're definitely the boss. Hey, Aaron, that reminds me. You owe us a Springsteen song.
I thought I'd gotten away with it too. Till you meddling
kids.
older gentlemen. All right. Let's do this. Well, I'm rolling down this river, not a sign that I will slow. There's no earthly way of knowing which direction the water flows.
Nice.
That doubles Springsteen's tribute to Gene Wilder.
I also like how you worked in a reference to an actual Springsteen album as well. So
Yes, thanks.
you went down to the river, did you?
Which is where he got started on that chord progression.
Very nice. Sorry, that was a masterful derailment of the plug. Steve, do you remember where you were up to?
I do, but
You
also
are a
you've
pro.
reminded me.
You're a pro.
Yes. Thank you. 23rd, SoundCloud. We may not be there anymore.
Yes.
Because we're on Libsyn now.
Yes, we are.
So that's your other option there, Tony. Is you contact us in any of those social media outlets to let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you liked or disliked about this episode. If you enjoyed this and you know another human being, or even not a human being, but that is capable of subscribing to iTunes feeds, you should recommend us to them. Because those numbers going up is better for all of us. That not only justifies the time and effort that we put into this thing, because we know that people care. If we get more listeners, means we can make this stuff better, means we can spend more time on it, that we can spend more effort.
And
money on it.
To be super specific, if you are capable of subscribing to this podcast on iTunes, please do so. Yeah, similarly, if you are capable of giving us a rating on iTunes and a review on iTunes, please do so. And ditto for our YouTube page. If YouTube is a place where you hang out frequently, then not only will you find these podcast episodes now going up on YouTube every week, and I am also slowly working through our backlog,
Thank you,
subscribing to that YouTube channel will also be hugely beneficial to us. I mean, in some ways, we've been doing this for nearly 3 years now, and we're still in the dark as to exactly how many of who is listening or watching when and how. And the best way that you can say to us, hey, we are consuming this content and we appreciate it, is to subscribe and review and recommend. So if you are willing to do that, we very much appreciate it. And the more of it that you can do, and the more listeners we get, the better we can make this thing.
Alrighty, so other than my cursory Googling revealing that Senua is a Celtic goddess worshipped in Roman Britain, whose name was first read incorrectly as Senua. She was unknown until a case of 26 votive offerings to her were discovered in 2002. There you go.
Cool.
The more you know.
You remembered your cursory Googling.
I did.
Yeah, we almost missed
Wonderful.
that.
Yep. In other news, hey Tony, if someone wanted to talk to you specifically, how might they do that?
They would use probably vocalizations, Steve. Hopefully,
power of human speech.
Given the fact that I'm pushing 40 now, you probably have to be reasonably close to me and not in a noisy environment.
Right.
If you wanted to use modern technology to do so, however, you can get in touch with me personally on Twitter at Kalinskald. That is KALINSKALD. I also do a game developer interview podcast called Downloadable Context, which you can find at downloadablecontext.com or at DLContext on Twitter.
Hey, Aaron, where do we find you?
Hey, if you wanna contact me personally, you can catch me at Poison Tasty Fish on Twitter, or if you'd like to read up on some of my essays around story and how it works in a video game, you can head to @PushingB or to pushingb.com.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Whoa. I'm awake. What?
How does
People get
Tony
in touch
and
with
me and I
you on the
Tony.
media,
Okay,
social
so
want to
media.
talk to you?
Yep.
Hey,
So-
Tony.
Hey, Steve.
Yep. Got
Tony,
it.
I want to contact Steve. How do I contact Steve? Can you ask Steve?
I can. Hey, Steve, if people want to get in touch
Yep.
with you personally, could you please tell
Yep.
Aaron how they would do that? Aaron, I told him.
All right. So Tony,
Thanks,
if you could tell,
What's up, Steve?
if you could tell Aaron and the listeners, who I'm sure are just loving this, just loving it, that they can find me on Twitter at _Steve Halliwell or through my website, stevehalliwell.com. This has been another episode of The First 10 Minutes, episode 91, I believe.
Does that mean Steve is your middle name? Your first name is
If you wish.
underscore?
Yep.
Hey, Tony. hey, Tony. Tony.
Yes.
Can you please thank Steve for passing on his contact details for me?
So I can. Hey, Aaron, if you want to tell him personally, then you should go and listen to the recording of this episode so that you can find out where on Twitter to get in touch
How
with
to
Steve.
do that,
I'm the one who's
I hope so.
going to suffer for all of this because the musical track that I put underneath the credits on our YouTube versions of the episodes is not this fucking long. So, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to loop it.
Everything is an opportunity to learn.
This is a
Tony.
good point.
Yes. Yes. Hey, Steve.
Yep.
Can you wish Tony good luck for me?
So that's another
right.
episode, everyone. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.